So this is an implementation issue primarily, which is a little outside of the scope of my work, but I'd like to step up a little bit higher altitude here for a second and suggest that maybe if it's going to be very costly to acquire the data, either by buying it, by creating a stream of it coming in, so building the pipeline to connect systems, some data engineering work, trading for it, borrowing it, scraping it off the web, whatever it may be, if we're focused on delivering value to our users and to our customers, then I'd want to understand, well, what's the status quo today around this project? Because this project has some promise of value, some promise of a better future that's behind it, right? Because nobody really wants the application, the model, the dashboard, the whatever the thing is, the output you're going to create. They want the promise, the outcome that is downstream from that. So the question is, what's that better future really look like? And is the only possible solution the one that they have come to us and asked us to create? Is the only way that we can help them by building a solution that requires us to acquire this data set, this elusive data set that's either too hard to get, too big, too small, not the right format, or whatever is wrong with it? Is that really the only thing that we can do to improve the future for our users and our stakeholders? I would suggest that maybe the answer is not. It's not. There's probably cases where the answer is, yeah, we really can't do anything with pricing because we have no pricing data and we'd really just be guessing with anything else. Fine, maybe there's some solutions like that. I would challenge your team to think more broadly about what else could we do here if we didn't have access to this? And so don't look at it as there's one solution out there. It's like, imagine going to a doctor and you go to a surgeon and you've got a problem with your arm. They're not just going to cut your arm open and start doing surgery without diagnosing the situation. And you'd probably run from that doctor if the only solution they had to every single problem was to do surgery. You probably want to go to someone who has a lot of different tools at their disposal to help improve your condition. Exercise, diet, doing nothing at all, going and talking to somebody, physical therapy, medicine. There's all kinds of different possible interventions there that can improve your arm's health in the long run, right? So what else could you do besides the one solution that requires this elusive data set that's really hard to get? Is there another way that we could deliver some sort of value? And so as a leader, maybe you can go back to your stakeholders and say, yes, we can do this solution, but that solution will take us 6 months. We've got to do all this data engineering. It's going to be really expensive. We might have to buy some of the data, and then we're not even sure whether or not when we build out our model cakes and we throw them into the oven and bake them, we're not really sure whether the model's going to be able to have a lot of predictive power anyways. So there's a lot of upfront investment. However, maybe there's a simpler solution that doesn't use machine learning that could, we can use a smaller set of data over here and we could get some preliminary insights out of it so that we can at least move from guessing right now, which is how we make decisions, to some type of informed decision making there. So the point is, how many other ways could we tackle the problem? And are we really just falling in love with the one implementation path that's in front of us? Or are we looking at the problem broadly and saying there's lots of different ways to potentially approach this? So that's how I would think of that, and not necessarily assume that the only solution requires us to go get this very elusive data set that's going to be hard to get. So I think you need to paint that picture of what are the trade-offs with this route versus, this other route here. Make that clear, and also constantly be focusing on, again, the humans in the loop, the people that are going to use this solution. Is this something that someone is actually going to be willing to use, and not just use it, but they're going to find it, they're going to depend on it, and hopefully it will be an indispensable service to them. We'd want to validate that stuff as early as possible in the process, especially when we know there's a large tax to pay up front in the form of acquiring this data that sounds very elusive. So that's how I would approach that. So let me talk about this for a second. I think that the reason that teams are having challenges with this is low adoption of the solutions that you're currently building. And if you don't have adoption, if human users can't or won't use the solutions you're giving them today, why are they going to look at your team as an innovation partner? Because effectively, you're not delivering something of value to the people who need to make decisions. So the easy answer here is, first, you need to solve the problem that's in front of you and the pain that your clients and your customers are feeling right now. You need to make a dent in that first. Not necessarily the technical problems that you have building out the solution, but make sure that there's an outcome associated with the output that's being created by you and your team. So if you can reliably focus on delivering value in the form of better outcomes, user experience outcomes turn into business outcomes. If you can deliver on the experience piece and make sure that people feel empowered to make better decisions with the data on a regular basis, not getting lucky, but repeatedly your team is able to deliver on that, it's going to be much easier for them to look at you as a partner and say, hey, this was great. Can I have some more? Can you help us with this? This was great. Could you also add this? Could you compare it to that? Is there a way we could automate this? They're going to be looking at you as someone who can deliver. So I think that's the first part. And then the second part of that is, if you are coming in with ideas about ways that you could use data that the business or your customers aren't currently asking, where you're coming in with the solution that's perhaps in search of a problem, or you know that there's a problem out there, but maybe the customer or your client or your sponsor doesn't necessarily feel it or they haven't articulated it yet, they're going to be more inclined to listen to you if you've previously been successful at delivering on the things that they have asked you to do. So I think the first thing is you have to build the trust by delivering solutions that really work. And remember, when we talk about business value, we have to get past the hurdle of adoption and use and delight and reliability and all those kinds of human things before the business will ever see value. Because remember, the business is just a collection of human beings. It's not an organization. It's not some special entity. It's just a collection of people. So we have to deliver some outcomes first before anyone is ever going to think of your data team as being any type of innovation partner. So focus on the outcomes piece, less on building the outputs and the technology. It's always downstream from the thing, the dashboard, the application, the tool, the model. The value is always downstream from that technology chunk that we're delivering. And this is the problem with project-oriented perspectives, where we think we're supposed to deliver a piece of technology that looks like A, B, C, D, and as soon as it's done, we put our pens down and we go on to the next thing. That mentality is what continues the cycle of low adoption, low utility, low use, because it assumes that the people asking for the solution know exactly what they need to get the outcome that they want. And a lot of times they express that need in the form of outputs and deliverables, and not necessarily in the form of very clear problem statements and needs. And a lot of times these needs are unarticulated. And so that's something we talk about in my training, about how to get to these unarticulated needs so that we're actually delivering on something that's really going to make an impact. So hope that helps. Agile. Everybody likes to talk about Agile. It's 20 years later, I'm still hearing about Agile all the time. So someone asked, do I use it, and what kinds of forms do I use it in? So the answer is I'm mostly focused on doing advisory work and training work. And so I'm not dealing as much with the day-to-day implementation, but I see Agile used all the time, and it's been used in, I come out of the software product world, and so this is nothing new, particularly in that space. I will say that almost every team that I looked at, they all have their form of Agile, and their modified Agile, or whatever you want to call it. I've heard serious allergies out there, and myself, I have an allergic reaction to SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework. I am not a project management person, and Agile is really a software development methodology. So I'm going to give you just a couple things about Agile in general. I love the idea of Agile in terms of delivering small amounts of value and getting feedback from users as quickly as possible so that we can improve.
The reality though is that a lot of teams aren't actually doing this. They're just shipping increments of work, and they're building that into 2 and 3 week sprints, and they're really focused on just delivering against the backlog. So the question is, what's in the backlog, and who's populating the backlog with the stuff that we're going to make? And who's focused on making sure that we're going to deliver some outcomes, some actual value, and that we're actually going to get this in front of users early enough that we can change it if it's necessary to change it. And this is what's not happening a lot of the time, because Agile never really had a place for formal design delivery inside of it. It doesn't contemplate where does user experience fit in, and strategy and all these kinds of things. It's really about delivering implementation. So what I care more about is, do we have a good plan, a strategy? Do we have defined success criteria for the project that do not look like technical success criteria for the project? It has to be this fast. It has to scale to this many users. All that stuff matters, but it only matters if the delivery at the end of the day is going to produce some type of change in the world that we want to see, a change, an improvement that is that is considered an improvement in the eyes of the beholder, and not necessarily for just technical purity's sake. So the best description that I've heard about this, if you're wondering about, well, how does design fit in, it's to not think about how does design fit into Agile, but how does Agile fit into design? How do we work Agile inside of user experience? And we're all doing user experience. If we're in charge of what are the tools and the dashboards and the applications and the models and the things that our users and customers and sponsors are going to interact with, then you are de facto doing design work whether you like it or not. And so my position on this is basically anyone that has any control about what someone is going to see or use is already a designer. You're just not a professional designer, and you're not doing design with intent. And that's something that we can learn how to do better, even if we're not titled designers. So how do we do Agile inside of this a design-driven approach, a product-driven approach, where we're really focused on downstream success criteria and measurable outcomes? That's really what the question is. And that takes a fairly large change in the perspective and the thinking. It means that all of the team, not just the designers, the people with the title of design, but anyone that's really in charge of the team's overall technology delivery, is approaching this with a care and a concern and some deliberate effort to deliver on design, deliver on user experience. And that's the thing that we're really focused on. All the other implementation stuff, it does matter. And I'm not saying that engineering and data quality and all those other things don't matter. However, they don't matter at all if they're not tied back to what the customer or the user really needs in order to accomplish the tasks and goals and challenges that they have. So that's really what needs to be the focus, is doing Agile inside of a design and product-driven method for creating data products, not how do we fit design into an engineering or a data science team's form of doing Agile. So that's what I would take away from that. Good luck.